My father is very generous. When my aunt bought a house, he lent her 200,000. When my uncle's family renovated their home, he lent them 100,000. When my cousin got married, he lent him 50,000. But when my family needed 5,000 yuan to buy a refrigerator, my dad said he had no money. Mom urged him to ask for the money back. But my dad said, Lola just bought a house and still has a mortgage to pay off. The second brother's family are all farmers. And the renovation used up all their savings. Where would they get the money to pay us back? Mark just got married. How could you have the nerve to go to his door and demand repayment? Later, my dad brought home a freezer from the second-hand market. But the freezer was an old relic that would cut out from time to time, and all the meat inside went bad. My mom smashed the freezer and filed for divorce. My dad couldn't understand. All because of a freezer, Mom said with a cold face. Yes. All because of a refrigerator. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. Mom smashed it with a rolling pin, and the old antique freezer completely stopped working, its hum silenced. I wasn't frightened, but my dad was. He was so startled that the water in his teacup spilled all over him. What's wrong with you? Why would you smash a perfectly good freezer? Mom didn't explain. She only said 2 words, divorce. My dad was stunned. Where did I upset you? Mom sat on the sofa and said nothing. She insisted on getting a divorce, but my dad refused to give her the marriage certificate. In front of the child, I'll ask you one more time, are you really going to divorce me just because I didn't buy you a refrigerator? Mom said expressionlessly, yes, all because of a refrigerator. My dad still didn't understand. What's the difference between a freezer and a refrigerator? I already bought a freezer. Didn't I? Even though it's an antique, it still works fine. Why do you have to be so stubborn about this? Mom didn't say a word. I opened the freezer to explain for Mom. Dad, look, all the meat in the fridge has gone bad. Mom was planning to make braised pork for me today. But this old relic keeps cutting out from time to time. It's been off and on since last night until this morning. In such hot weather, it can't keep anything fresh. My dad was still putting up a last-ditch resistance. Completely oblivious to the determination in Mom's eyes. If the meat's gone bad, you could just go buy fresh ones. If the freezer isn't working, you could have told me. I could have bought you a new fridge. Are we really going to let our marriage of over 10 years fall apart over a refrigerator? Aren't you afraid people will laugh at us if word gets out? He took out his phone and opened the shopping app. I'll order a new refrigerator right now. Let's not get divorced. Okay, Mom said coldly. I don't need it anymore. She raised her head and reached out her hand. Bring the marriage certificate. Let's go now before the Civil Affairs Bureau closes. My father's hand trembled. Fine. Since you don't know what's good for you, let's get a divorce then. Don't you dare regret it, with a child in tow. You'll never find someone as well off and even-tempered as me. My mother's eyes were filled with disappointment. My father grabbed the car keys and slammed the door shut with force. Venting his frustration, he didn't wait for his mother, stepping on the gas and speeding away. His mother calmly took out her phone and called a ride. They were gone for the afternoon and returned home just in time for dinner. His father plopped down on the sofa. We have a 1-month cooling-off period. I suggest you think it over carefully. You're welcome to change your mind anytime. I'm hungry now. Make me something to eat. Mom's hands paused while packing the luggage. She walked over, closed my workbook, and took my hand to lead me outside. Mom will take you to eat something delicious. Awesome. I jumped up with joy, leaving my dad standing there awkwardly alone. Mom took me to a 5-star restaurant. I've never been to a place like this before, so I stood awkwardly at the door for a moment. Mom, this place requires a reservation, right? Can we get in? Mom patted me on the shoulder. Don't worry, we have a reservation. My leader was originally planning to come here for dinner, but something came up suddenly and she couldn't make it, so she gave it to me. I wasn't planning to come originally, but seeing your dad like that, never mind, I shouldn't use you as my emotional dumping ground. Let's go in. We smoothly entered the restaurant, and my mom and I chose a seat by the window, looking at the variety of dishes on the menu. I swallowed my saliva. Our family rarely eats out because my dad tends to lend out any savings he has. Some are relatives, some are colleagues or friends. The amounts range from tens of thousands to hundreds or thousands. My dad always lends money whenever someone asks, to save money. My mom always cooks at home and doesn't allow me to eat out. Every time I go out with friends, I always have the least pocket money. Just as we were about to start ordering, I heard some noise at the door. I turned my head and saw my dad arguing with the waiter. Why won't you let me in? My wife and kids are eating inside. The waiter politely explained, I'm sorry, sir, but your name isn't on the reservation list. You can't go in. Are you deaf? I said my wife and daughter are in there. Sorry. Your family only reserved 2 seats. My dad felt he couldn't get through to the waiter and started shouting my name. Susan. How can you have the nerve to eat inside while your dad is still starving outside? Susan, you come out here right now. Dad's behavior was so embarrassing that I looked to Mom for help. Mom then called over the restaurant manager and whispered something to him, after which security forcibly escorted Dad out. As Dad left, he shot me a resentful look. Finally, we could enjoy the meal in peace. I knew this kind of restaurant was expensive and had already prepared myself mentally. But when the bill was placed on the table, I was still taken aback by the price. I gripped my phone tightly, thinking that if Mom didn't have enough money, I would take out my New Year's money. But Mom swiftly paid the 5,000 yuan, not giving me a chance. I whispered to Mom, "Mom, after we finish this meal, are we not going to live our lives anymore? You should know, this 5,000 yuan was the money Mom had saved from her salary to buy a refrigerator." Mom smiled, "Don't worry. Without your dad, our lives will only get better from now on. Tomorrow, we'll go withdraw the money." I didn't understand what my mother meant at the time. After all, our family had long since run out of savings. The next day, when I arrived at my aunt's house, I understood everything. We came to collect a debt. Aunt is a housewife, and as soon as we knocked on the door, she welcomed us in with a smile. "Sister-in-law, what brings you here?" While pouring water for us, she inquired about the purpose of our visit. Her house was bought just a few years ago, and the decoration is the latest style. Meanwhile, my family still lives in an old, small, and shabby place. With yellow decor from over a decade ago, Mom touched the solid wood coffee table. "Lola, this coffee table must be expensive, right? It's solid wood, probably costs over 10,000 yuan. Aunt waved her hand with a smile. "Not that expensive, just over 9,000. Indeed, expensive things are just better. Your house is in a great location too, with the subway right downstairs. Was paying in full a big financial pressure at the time. The main thing is that it's close to the school. The full price was 1.8 million. No, we actually bought it with a loan." Her expression changed as she realized she had let something slip. "Sis, what exactly did you come here for?" "I happened to be at home when my aunt came to borrow money from my dad." My aunt tearfully explained that her child needed to attend a school in a specific district, and she couldn't afford the down payment for an apartment there, so she had to come to our family to borrow money. My dad waved his hand and lent her 200,000 yuan every time I pressed for the debt repayment. My aunt would say that her family was still paying off the mortgage and under too much pressure to have any money to spare, but now it seems clear that she was lying. There was no mortgage at all, she was just stalling to avoid paying back the money. I really don't understand how my dad could have failed to notice such an obvious trick for so long. Mom didn't stand on ceremony either and got straight to the point. "Your brother and I have divorced. The 200,000 yuan we lent you to buy the house was our joint marital property. Now, I'm here to get back my share of 100,000 yuan. Auntie's warm expression instantly changed. Before Mom could say anything, Auntie launched into a rapid-fire tirade. "What, you divorced my brother? Wasn't he good enough to you? He never dared to disobey you. If you said east, he wouldn't go west. Have you had it too good for too long and now want a taste of hardship? What about Susan? She'll be looked down upon by her in-laws in the future for coming from a single-parent family. Sister-in-law, how can you be so selfish? You're already in your 30s, yet you're throwing a tantrum about divorce like a child. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" Mom reached out her hand. "No more talking. Give back the money." Seeing that changing the subject wasn't working, Aunt simply started making excuses. "We don't have any money. We have to pay for our child's education and the mortgage, and only my husband is working to support the family. How could we possibly have extra money to pay you back? Besides, this money was lent to me by my brother, not by you. Why should I pay you back? If anyone should be asking for the money back, it should be my brother." My mother snorted coldly. "You've got Cheng Jianxi wrapped around your finger. Do you think I can't see it? Every time he asks for the money back, you cry and play the victim, and he feels too embarrassed to press you further. I'm not here to defend Cheng Jianxi. All I want is my 100,000 yuan back. If you don't repay the money, we'll see each other in court." Upon hearing the threat of a lawsuit, my aunt became even more defiant. "Then go ahead and sue me. What evidence do you have to prove that I borrowed money from you?" But when my mother produced the IOU, my aunt panicked. "Didn't my brother say the IOU was destroyed long ago? How cunning of you to have deceived my brother." The IOU clearly stated that my aunt had borrowed 200,000 yuan from my parents. At that time, my aunt was crying her eyes out. To borrow the money, she even wrote an IOU, promising to pay it back. My dad took one look and threw the IOU in the trash. Why talk like strangers in the same family? Writing an IOU, are you trying to distance yourself from me? Come on, I'll go to the bank and get the money right now. The money our family had saved for a long time to renovate the house was just lent to my aunt like that. After Dad left, Mom picked the IOU out of the trash, smoothed it out, and kept it safe. She suppressed her emotions and contacted all the scheduled renovation workers one by one to cancel the appointments, saying sorry countless times in a single day. Thinking of this, my disappointment in my father grew even stronger. Aunt was still criticizing my mother, calling her scheming, saying she had a heart as vicious as a snake or scorpion, and that she was worse than a pig or a dog. With a smack sound, the world fell silent. Mother raised her hand and slapped Aunt. "You'd better watch your mouth." Aunt yelled that she would call the police. "That's perfect. I also need the police to judge this fairly. When they arrive, you'll have to pay back that 100,000 yuan, whether you want to or not, and maybe even with interest added." Aunt was stunned. After a moment of thought, she started crying and playing the victim. Mom pulled me toward the door. "Without Cheng Jianxi, you're just a stranger to me, and I have no obligation to listen to your complaints. I'll give you 3 days, or you can expect to receive a court summons." As soon as I opened the door, I ran into my father, who was panting heavily. Probably when we asked for money, my aunt had already sent a message to my father. He glanced at my aunt, who was slumped on the floor, and confronted my mother. "Lily, how dare you hit my sister, and even come to her house to demand money?" He raised his hand, but mother was quicker, landing a crisp, sharp slap. "Cheng Jianxi, I'm here for my money. It has nothing to do with you. If you dare lay a finger on me, I'll make sure you spend a few days behind bars." Dad was dumbfounded. "Honey, how did you become like this? You feel so unfamiliar." Mom didn't say a word, walked around him, and left directly. After leaving my aunt's house, we immediately went to my cousin's place. I heard that when my cousin got married, he gave his wife a bride price of 88,000 yuan, but 50,000 of that was borrowed from my family. When my mom came to ask for the 25,000 yuan that belonged to her, my cousin's wife looked embarrassed upon hearing it. She called my cousin into the bedroom, and the two of them talked about something. When she came out, my cousin's wife was holding a thick stack of cash. "Auntie, I didn't know Mark borrowed money from you for the wedding. This is the gift money we received, a total of 50,000 yuan. Please count it." My cousin's wife wore gold-rimmed glasses and looked very intellectual, and she was also very sensible. Yet she married my cousin. I just thought it was such a pity. After counting out 25,000, Mom pushed the rest back. "I'm only taking what's mine. The other half has nothing to do with me." But my cousin's wife is a very kind person. She transferred the remaining amount to my dad via WeChat, because as soon as we got home, my dad started demanding an explanation. "Lily, how could you have the nerve to go to Marquez's house to ask for money? You clearly knew they just got married, and yet you rushed over to cause trouble. Now look what happened the moment you left. The couple had a fight. If they end up divorcing, you'll be the one to blame." My mom snorted coldly. "You men really have mastered the art of shifting blame. If they divorce, it'll only be because Jiu Lan discovered that Mark has character flaws and decided to cut her losses in time, borrowing money to get married and hiding it from his wife. What? Did he think that once they were married, he could control her and turn his premarital debt into a joint marital debt?" I was also speechless. "Dad, even I can understand such an obvious point. How come you can't?" My dad seemed to have hit a sore spot and jumped up, exclaiming, "What nonsense are you talking? Mark is borrowing money everywhere just to marry Jiu Lan, isn't he? Your twisted logic is going to corrupt Susan. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Mark is still waiting for me to go mediate. My dad is about to go meddle in other people's business again. Mark cousin is actually a distant relative of ours, and we never had any contact before. It's just that Jiu Lan works here with us. Mark and cousin followed her here to pursue her. On the day we found out cousin was coming, my dad brought him directly to our home and warmly hosted him, even forcing me to give up my room for him to stay in. After my mom returned from her business trip, she had a big argument with my dad, and only then did cousin move out. Every family has its own way of life. Even if others are arguing and getting divorced, it has nothing to do with us. My father isn't unaware of these truths, but he always feels the need to help others, to lecture them on what's right. He really enjoys that feeling, as if he knows everything and others desperately need him. My dad always loves to meddle in other people's business. He had just hung up the phone and came to my bedroom to assign me a task. "Susan, Chad's child is about to enter the 3rd year of middle school. Go and tutor them to strengthen their foundation." I took off my headphones, which were playing English listening exercises. "Dad, I don't want to go. Chad's son doesn't do well in school, and my dad always insists that I tutor him. He says friends should help each other out. But Chad's son and I aren't friends. If he needs help, my dad should find him a tutoring service. But my dad always takes the shortcut by asking me. I'm about to enter my senior year of high school, and I've been reviewing the foundational knowledge from my freshman and sophomore years all summer. I'm really busy too." After hearing my refusal, my dad was unhappy. "Why can't you help them out? I already promised them. And now you're saying you won't go. Isn't that making me lose face? I put down the pen in my hand and looked up at my dad. Dad, for the sake of your reputation, I have to review middle school material again, create a reasonable study plan for Chad's son, and supervise his homework. Do you know how much time this will take? This is your promise, but I'm the one putting in all the time and effort. And I'm the one whose studies are being delayed. It's like every time you invite friends over for dinner, but Mom is always the one cooking, washing dishes, and cleaning up the peanut shells and beer bottles, while you just drink and sleep soundly afterward. Don't you think something's wrong with this? I never used to say these things before. I would just lower my head and agree, but what I got in return was endless free tutoring, and I even had to pay for my own transportation. Now, I don't want to be a free tutor anymore. I know my dad understood, but he's still pretending not to. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think you've just learned bad habits from your mother. After we get divorced, you must live with me. I shook my head and refused. That's impossible. Dad, if I live with you, I'll not only have to study but also help you with all kinds of meddlesome tasks. With Mom, I can at least be a carefree child and focus on preparing for the college entrance exam. I can see things clearly. If I were to live with my dad, my time would be taken up by him to fulfill all sorts of promises he makes just for the sake of face. I don't think I'm some kind of prodigy who can juggle all these trivial matters while still studying hard enough to get into a good university. So even if my dad fights for custody of me, I will firmly stand by my mom's side. After all, the legs are on my own body. After getting the money my cousin returned, my mom and I moved out and rented a place near my school. While she went to work, I stayed at home and studied hard. Without my dad around to disturb us, the days became much quieter. At home, he would always ask me to serve tea, pour water, and wash fruit while I was studying. If I didn't do it, he would deliberately make a lot of noise, disturbing me so much that I couldn't concentrate on my studies. Now, I finished a set of problems in just an hour, and my study efficiency has greatly improved. During this time, my aunt refused to repay the money, and my mother actually took her to court. Now, my aunt has no choice but to pay it back. That morning, my mother went back to our hometown to press my second uncle for the debt. She didn't tell me, afraid it would interfere with my studies, and secretly bought the earliest bus ticket. But my second uncle's family is not easy to deal with, and I couldn't rest easy, so I followed her. As soon as I reached the door, I heard intense arguing coming from inside. Lily, did my elder brother send you here? Does he want this house back? Let me tell you, don't even think about it. This house is mine. My parents left it to me. I don't have the money to pay you back either. 50,000 yuan, you're trying to ruin our family. Aunt cried out. Where am I supposed to get 50,000 yuan? You might as well just kill me. The house was in chaos. Second uncle assumed a defensive stance, confronting my mother. Aunt was sitting on the ground crying and making a scene, while the child screamed nearby. I thought my mother would back down and give up on the money. It seemed she was losing the upper hand. I was about to rush in to help her, but I never expected that my usually gentle mother would pick up the wood-chopping axe and hold it against second uncle's head. I don't care about your shabby house. After the elders passed away, Cheng Jianqi said that as the eldest, he had the duty to take care of you. So he gave the house to you, but that has nothing to do with me. You borrowed 100,000 yuan from us, and now you must pay back 50,000. Are you going to give me this 50,000 yuan or not? If you don't, bang. Mom smashed the glass beside her. You'll end up just like this glass. Mom struck a bit too hard, and blood seeped from second uncle's neck. Perhaps Auntie was frightened by Mom's fierce expression, genuinely afraid that she might do something drastic. After all, in their eyes, Mom was capable of doing something as scandalous as getting a divorce, something that would make people talk behind her back. Auntie tremblingly pulled out a card from the bottom of the cabinet. There's 50,000 yuan in this card. It's all the money we have. Take it all. Just don't hurt Cheng. Our whole family depends on him to survive. Mom was speechless. What would I do with your card? Transfer the money to me right now. Auntie tremblingly took out her phone again and transferred the money. Once the money was received, Mom put down the axe, ignored second uncle who had long since fainted from fear, and turned to leave. When she saw me at the door, she was startled. I didn't say a word, just held tightly onto Mom's trembling hand that she couldn't control. I know Mom did all this to make our future lives better. If it were my dad, he might have let his male chauvinism take over and ended up giving away tens of thousands of yuan. After the 1-month cooling-off period ended, Mom insisted on getting a divorce. My dad couldn't persuade her otherwise, so he had to agree. They negotiated and sold their only old house. They sold it for $1 million. And each of my parents took 500,000. Mom used the money to take out a loan and bought a 2-bedroom apartment in a newly developed building, putting it under my name. She said she didn't want their divorce to force me into a life of constantly moving around. The 100,000 yuan my aunt owed was also returned to us. Mom not only bought a new refrigerator, but also purchased appliances like a dishwasher, a robot vacuum, and more. Our quality of life has improved by more than one level compared to before. Mom has become more hardworking, actively participating in every project at her company. Even when it comes to business trips to remote, small countries, she volunteers to go. Her supervisor is very impressed by her drive and has started to place greater trust in her. Mom's career is flourishing. She was promoted to team leader in the sales department in less than half a year. And I also heard some news about Dad, that 500,000 yuan of his wasn't saved. The money from selling the house was quickly divided up by relatives and friends just days after it was received. My aunt said my uncle was about to get a promotion and wanted to spend some money to pull some strings, borrowing over 200,000 in one go. My dad heard this and promptly transferred the money. He said a promotion is a good thing and must be supported. My second uncle said that it would soon be autumn and time to harvest the wheat. But the family was short of a harvester. My father felt sorry for my second uncle working in the fields day after day, exposed to the wind and sun, so he generously bought him a 30,000 yuan harvester as a gift. Then, I heard that my mother took all the money from my second uncle's family, believing that as the eldest, it was his duty to help his brother, so he lent him 30,000 yuan. Oh no, it can't be called a loan, because it was my father who voluntarily gifted the 30,000 yuan to my second uncle. My father's colleague owes the bank a lot of money and is about to become a deadbeat, yet he borrowed another 100,000 from my father. One relative borrows a little by crying poverty, another friend borrows a little for an emergency. In the end, my father was left with only 20,000 yuan. How do I know all this so clearly? Because after the divorce, the first time my dad approached my mom, his first words were to borrow money. Lily, I know you have money, my childhood friend. Donald, do you remember him? His daughter has leukemia and is lying in the hospital waiting for money to save her life. I only had 20,000, which I've already transferred. Now I want to borrow some from you. Don't worry, I will definitely pay you back. Mom asked, how much do you want to borrow? My dad lowered his head. I'll borrow however much you have. Mom continued to ask, so, is this money considered borrowed by you, or by Donald? My dad was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. Mom was exasperated. You must have lost your mind. Forget about whether Donald will pay back the money or not. Hasn't it been over 10 years since you last contacted him? The moment he reaches out, it's to borrow money. Can't you use your brain and think, is this money even safe to lend? And if you lend it, will you ever see it again? Do you really think you're the reincarnation of Guanyin, meddling in everyone's business? Cheng Jianxi. How much suffering have Susan and I endured because of your meddling? Are you blind and can't see it? I thought divorcing you would free me from you. But here you are, shamelessly showing up at my door asking for money. Do you really want me to squander all 500,000 yuan in housing funds like you did? Is that what would satisfy you? Get out of here. It was the first time Mom had exploded since the divorce. Her slaps and punches rained down on my father's head and face. Trying to drive him out, I remembered every time before when my father, in a moment of mercy, felt sorry for some relative or friend and with a grand gesture, lent out all the remaining savings in the house. My mother stood in front of the fish stall for several days, waiting for that fish to breathe its last, just to buy it at a cheaper price. To save money, I only dare to eat the cheapest meal in the cafeteria every noon, ordering a boiled vegetable dish with rice. But my father never seems to notice this, still splurging on dining out and drinking with friends as soon as his salary arrives. Thinking of this, I started to resent my father too. My father, enraged and humiliated, grabbed a glass decoration from the shoe cabinet and smashed it on the floor. Lily, can you stop making a scene already? When lives are at stake, you're here throwing a tantrum and dwelling on past grievances. How can you be so petty? Shards flew everywhere. And the cat at home was so frightened it darted under the sofa. Furious, I shoved my dad hard, pushing him out the door. My dad stumbled and fell to the ground. I yelled at him, stop bothering us, stop eyeing Mom's money, you have no right to use it, Mom has nothing to do with you anymore. I slammed the door shut. Only then did my father realize that Mom's divorce wasn't just a fit of temper, she was serious. For the first time, he felt a sense of panic. Mom cleaned up the broken glass and opened a can of food to comfort the kitten. She looked at me with heartache. I'm sorry, meow meow, it's all my fault for insisting you come home today, making you witness this scene. Mom held me in her arms, and I gently patted her back. I don't blame Mom. I will continue to protect Mom in the future. Dad is a spendthrift. No, more like an old spendthrift. Whatever he does is his business. Mom and I just need to live our lives behind closed doors. But I never expected that after what happened last time, my dad would suddenly change his ways. That weekend, I was doing my homework at home when I suddenly heard a knock at the door. Opening the door, I saw a brand new refrigerator. The deliveryman smiled and said, "This fridge is really expensive, it costs at least 10,000 yuan. The deliveryman asked me to step aside so he could move the refrigerator inside, but we already had a new fridge at home, and I hadn't heard my mom mention buying another one. Upon asking, I found out that the buyer was my dad. At that moment, my dad sent a message to my mom, "Lily, have you received the refrigerator? Lily, I've come to my senses now. I know I did a lot of wrong things in the past that led to the breakdown of our marriage, but after all, we've been husband and wife for almost 20 years. Will you forgive me this time? I promise I won't lend money to anyone else anymore, and I'll work hard to earn money to make our lives better." It turns out he realized his mistake and wanted to start winning her back, but it was all too late. Mom didn't even glance at the new refrigerator and slammed the door shut. "This isn't what I bought. Please return it." He even blocked my dad. After losing contact with my mom, my dad started showing up frequently at my doorstep, claiming it was to take me to and from school, but I was already a senior in high school, about to become an adult, and had no need for a parent to escort me, yet my dad still showed up at the door every day without fail. I saw his car had turned into a beat-up used vehicle. Upon asking, I found out that a distant relative needed a car to save face, so he sold it to someone else for 50,000 and bought this used car himself. I rolled my eyes. Sure enough, a dog can't stop eating shit. My dad would come to my house every day under the pretext of taking care of me, doing chores around the house. During that time, he even scrubbed the fridge so much it developed sensitive skin, but as soon as it was mealtime, my mom would only cook enough for two and shoo him out. As he was leaving, my dad said he knew how much trouble all his past promises had caused me, so this time, when his friend who runs a restaurant asked me to help out during winter break, he firmly refused on my behalf. My mom wasn't having it. Being good to your child is what you're supposed to do as a father, don't use it to fish for compliments. After pushing my dad out the door, my mom served me some braised pork and said to me, "Your dad is good to you, you don't need to refuse or feel awkward, it's only natural for him to be good to you, so don't carry any psychological burden." I let out a long sigh of relief. I had been worried that if I accepted my dad's kindness, my mom would think I had betrayed her and taken his side, so I've always been carefully observing my mom's emotions, afraid that she might feel uncomfortable. Even if my dad bought me my favorite celebrity merchandise, I had to pretend not to like it and refuse it. Every time my dad transferred money to me, I sent it back, but I never expected that my mom had already thought of these things. He gives you money, and you take it all without hesitation. After all, you should never turn down money, no matter what. I took a bite of the braised pork and nodded vigorously. I understand. Mom told me that she had already applied to schools abroad, and once I start college, she will go overseas for further studies. The foreign trade company she worked for was, after all, quite small, with very limited room for advancement. At her age, without extensive work experience, it would be very difficult to switch to a larger company, so she decided to go abroad, to study while working and gain experience. By then, even if her father wanted to come and seek reconciliation, he wouldn't be able to find her. "Mom is truly a mom," she said. "It's never too late to set sail in life." I took these words to heart. My dad still waits for me at the door every day, and I don't refuse. I get into his second-hand car and enjoy a hearty breakfast. But one day, he suddenly disappeared and never came back. I didn't think much of it, assuming he had just given up. Life for my mom and me finally became much quieter. However, after the pre-sale apartment was delivered, we saw my dad there. The apartment my mom bought for me was delivered after the college entrance exams ended, and we hired a decoration company to handle the renovation. To be honest, I didn't even recognize that it was my dad. He was wearing work clothes stained with cement and dust, and his hair had turned grey from the cement. At that time, he was transporting cement and sand. Hearing my and my mom's voices, he turned his back, afraid we might recognize him. But after all, we had lived together for over a decade, and both my mom and I recognized him at a glance. It had been more than half a year since we last saw him, and he had actually fallen to such a state. Both my mom and I were curious, but neither of us interrupted his work. Continuing to discuss the renovation details with the contractor, after all the workers had left, I called my dad to the home-style restaurant downstairs. We ordered a few simple dishes. My dad wolfed them down, drank a large glass of water, and was about to light a cigarette. Seeing my mom's furrowed brow, he put the cigarette away again. Mom hates the smell of smoke the most. My father recounted his experiences over the past 6 months in detail. It turned out that his sudden disappearance wasn't because he had given up on winning back his wife, But because he was taken to the police station and detained for a few days, this matter actually traces back to my father's childhood friend Donald. Donald found out that my dad had sold the house after the divorce and wanted to borrow money, but he was too late. My dad's money had already been divided up by relatives and friends. By the time he arrived, my dad only had 20,000 yuan left. Donald said his child had leukemia and was lying in a hospital bed waiting for life-saving money, speaking with tears streaming down his face. My dad then came to borrow money from my mom. Of course, we scolded him harshly and drove him away, but my dad is the type who likes to meddle in other people's business. No matter how tough his own life is, or if he doesn't even know where his next meal is coming from, he still insists on getting involved in other people's family matters. Donald, after learning that my dad had no money, suggested that he take out a loan. During that time, my father focused all his attention on my mother and me. He wanted to salvage the marriage, so he didn't dare lend money to Donald anymore, let alone take out a loan, but at the same time, he was very worried about Donald's child. That's how someone took advantage of the situation. One day, Donald said he had thought of a way to raise money quickly. To save the child, he was willing to take out a bank loan, but the loan amount was too large, and the bank required a guarantor. My father thought that being a guarantor shouldn't be a big deal, so he took his ID and went. At this point, he took a big gulp of beer. I was so foolish. If I had listened to you earlier, I wouldn't have been scammed by Donald. Lily had told me long ago that Donald, after all these years without contact, suddenly reaching out just to borrow money definitely meant something was wrong. But I always thought, we were childhood friends who grew up together since we were little. How bad could he be? My father overestimated human nature. Donald tricked my father into taking out an AB loan. Simply put, it was using my father's identity to take out a loan, but the money went into Donald's account. My father inexplicably ended up with millions in debt. Donald ran off with the money, disappearing without a trace. My father couldn't handle the blow and started drinking every day, trying to numb himself with alcohol and escape reality. But the monthly repayment notices and debt collection calls from the bank made him realize he couldn't hide from it. No matter how much he paid, the debt never seemed to decrease, and the interest kept piling up. Finally, he was declared a dishonest person. Upon learning this, the company fired my father. My father felt as if the sky had fallen. His only source of income was cut off, and he could never repay this loan in his lifetime. In a fit of anger, he smashed the company's computer. In the end, he was taken to the police station and required to compensate the company. At that time, my father didn't have a single penny to his name and was detained for a few days. Hearing this, I felt a bit scared. After all, I am his child. If he can't repay the debt, will the bank come after me to pay it back? My father noticed my concern, took another gulp of wine, and said, I'll find a way to pay it back. I won't let this affect you. This is the trouble I've caused, and I should be the one to pay for it. I asked my father, you owe so much money. Why don't you think about asking aunt and second uncle to pay back the money you lent them before? My dad said he wasn't the one who didn't ask for it. Upon finding out he had been deceived, he immediately went to see his aunt. Because his aunt owed the most money, but when he stated his purpose, his aunt either cried or stubbornly refused to pay. After learning that my father owed millions, my aunt even pushed him out the door, and the whole family went on a trip to avoid him, afraid that my father would borrow money from them. My second uncle's family also made a big fuss, demanding to separate from my father, saying that from then on, my father's affairs had nothing to do with them. My father gritted his teeth. Back when our parents passed away, it was because I felt sorry for you having no house that I gave up the old family home to you without a fight. It was also because I couldn't bear to see you suffer under the sun and wind while harvesting wheat that I spent 30,000 to buy you a harvester. Cheng, you can't be so ungrateful and faithless. My uncle's family didn't even offer my father a sip of water. They drove him out of the village with both insults and blows. They also spread rumors about my father in the village, claiming he would go door to door borrowing money. Relatives and friends who had previously borrowed money from my father, upon hearing he was millions in debt, quickly blocked him and deleted his contact information. As a discredited individual, my father could only take on hard labor jobs, following contractors around to work on various sites. As he spoke, my father burst into tears. I thought we were all one family, that we were good friends who would go through fire and water for each other. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. Lily, I've paid a huge price for the foolish things I've done, and I now know that in this world, besides my deceased parents, you are the one who has been the best to me. Lily, can we get back together again? Hearing this, my sympathy for my father instantly vanished. Looking at him, I suddenly felt terrified, afraid that he was like a patient hellhound, waiting for the right moment to drag you into a hell from which there is no return. Fortunately, my mother has always been clear-headed. She rejected my father, "Jerry, after this meal, we will have nothing to do with each other. I will also change the renovation company, so you'd better find another way out." My father lowered his head and did not try to persuade her to stay. After the college entrance exam results came out, I was successfully admitted to my dream university and even changed my name. At the same time, Mom received an offer from a foreign school. A month later, one of us headed off to college, the other headed toward a new life. Matthew and I are recognized as the model couple in our circle. We are deeply in love and devoted to each other. But what they don't know is that Matthew also has a childhood sweetheart he holds dear in his heart. When the childhood sweetheart divorced due to domestic violence, Matthew was so furious he wanted to kill someone. I wouldn't even lay a finger on Marsha. How dare that beast? I was in the delivery room suffering through painful labor, while he was happily doting on his childhood sweetheart, before losing consciousness completely from severe bleeding. I saw Matthew's latest social media post. "If I could go back 6 years, I would never have let you marry that scumbag." Finally, we both returned to 6 years ago. He saved his childhood sweetheart from dire straits, and I saved myself from misery. As the baby's loud cry rang in my ears, I finally exhausted all my strength. The doctors and nurses smiled and said it was a girl, then brought her to me, a high-nose bridge and a small, round mouth. It's hard to say whether it looks more like me or more like Matthew. I strained to reach out and touch this adorable little bundle, but in the end, I couldn't manage it, because at the same time, the nurses' panicked voices rose one after another. "The mother is hemorrhaging, prepare for emergency treatment." I could feel the doctor's frantic movements, and also sense the trickling blood continuously flowing from my body. At first, I thought it was just a manageable postpartum hemorrhage, until my eyelids grew heavier and heavier. I began to feel afraid, glancing at my daughter sleeping soundly beside me. Despite the doctor's strong objections, I still insisted on taking a look at my phone. Before giving birth, my husband Matthew and I had a serious argument, so much so that he left in anger, and even the task of accompanying me during childbirth was taken over by my parents. By now, I already had a bad feeling, so I urgently wanted to get in touch with Matthew. The rights and wrongs between us no longer needed to be discussed. But I at least had to pave a good path for my daughter. The phone rang twice with no answer, and as if guided by some strange impulse, I opened WeChat and clicked into the Moments feed. Matthew's post was pinned at the very top. Time-stamped an hour and a half ago, right around the time I was being wheeled into the delivery room, he had posted a meaningless picture. But what truly shattered me was the caption he wrote: "If only I could go back 6 years, I would never let you marry that scumbag." Marsha, the childhood sweetheart Matthew was willing to abandon his wife and children to protect. Another look at the location tag on the social media post showed it was exactly the Matthew had been eyeing for property not long ago. Back then, he said it was the first gift for the child, and now, he was offering it with both hands to another woman. Only at this moment did I realize that the love and time of these years were nothing but a fleeting dream I had woven for myself. Facing Matthew's unreserved favoritism towards his childhood friend, I chose to be understanding and tolerant. In the end, it has come to this: regret, pain, hatred. How I wish I could kill them. Yet there is nothing I can do. I couldn't control my surging emotions, and the bleeding increased dramatically. I watched as the doctors kept operating the ECG monitor, passing hemostats back and forth. Yet the blood continued to gush out relentlessly. My consciousness gradually blurred. I heard people around me shouting incessantly, urging me not to fall asleep, begging me to think of my newborn daughter. But I'm too tired, really, too tired. I couldn't believe I was reborn, yet the surroundings were just too consistent with everything in my memory. I stared at the student ID casually placed on the desk, my eyes widening as I read the bold characters clearly printed on it. Animation design, Class 3 Melissa, unable to contain the frantic beating in my chest. I grabbed my roommate who was about to go to bed and asked with a choked voice what year it was. Although my roommate rolled her eyes and said I must have gone crazy from working on my graduation project, she still answered my question obediently. Hearing the answer that matched my speculation from someone else, my mind went blank for a few seconds, followed by disbelief at the absurdity, and finally, an overwhelming joy I couldn't suppress. Like a madman, I laughed and cried at the same time, murmuring under my breath, "I'm back, I'm really back, I truly am back." I had actually gone back 6 years in time. My roommates in the dorm stared in shock, all agreeing that I must have been driven insane by our advisor. Before I could continue my madness any longer, another roommate rushed in and shouted, "What are you girls still doing here? Let's go down and watch the show. Someone's confessing their love downstairs in the dorm." As soon as the words were spoken, everyone rushed out. The roommate closest to me pulled me along, as if I were under a spell. College students are naturally born spectators. By the time we rushed downstairs, The small square below was already surrounded by layers of people, both inside and out. From the outer edge, I could vaguely make out the scene. Romantic music, roses scattered all over the ground, heart-shaped candles, and the male lead dressed in a mascot costume. It was a typical college courtship setup. One that would have felt outdated 6 years later. Somehow, though, the scene felt strangely familiar to me. It wasn't until a few minutes later, when the male lead held the microphone and loudly professed his love, that my memory finally connected successfully. "Marsha, I love you, will you be my girlfriend?" The boy raised the microphone, shouting with all his might toward the direction of the dormitory building. A crowd of onlookers glanced at him, then turned their gaze toward the girls' dormitory. The latter showed no abnormalities. Someone began to tease. "Dude, aren't you being a bit careless? There are so many people named Marsha in the whole college, who knows which one you're calling out? Or, are you saying you want them all?" Amid the roaring laughter, the guy raised the microphone again. "Marsha from Class 3 of the 2018 Computer Science program. I like you. Would you be willing to be my girlfriend?" It wasn't until this moment that I was certain the guy making this grand confession was none other than Nick. That is, Marsha's future husband. I don't know what kind of twisted fate this is, but the moment I returned, I stumbled upon such a jaw-dropping scene. In the previous life, this grand confession was the very beginning of their love. The only difference was, this time I had no interest in being a mere spectator, amid the crowd's cheers. The heroine of the night slowly emerged from the dormitory building, with shoulder-length hair, a white long dress, and canvas shoes. Her face carried a faint blush. Marsha still looked just as I remembered, the classic image of an innocent, harmless little white flower. But who could have guessed that this delicate white flower would later turn my life upside down and leave me with no peace? I suppressed the anger in my heart and stayed on the sidelines, continuing to watch the drama unfold. Little did I know then that, in just a few short minutes, the fire would spread to me. The confession process proceeded in an orderly manner. Marsha was escorted to the center of the stage by a crowd of classmates. Nick then removed the bare headpiece, knelt on one knee before Marsha, and presented the rose and diamond ring he had prepared. "Marsha, I've liked you for a long time. Will you be my girlfriend?" To be fair, there were quite a few suitors for Marsha at school. Yet she ended up choosing Nick. I remember asking her in the previous life, and she said she loved Nick for his bravery and romance. Yet at this moment, as I see her eyes glistening with tears at the sight of that diamond ring, I seem to have gained a new understanding of bravery and romance. The atmosphere was perfectly set, and Marsha, overcome with emotion, gently covered her mouth with her left hand while her right hand was already reaching out to accept the gift. But at the very moment she was about to nod, an anxious male voice came from off the field, from far to near. "She doesn't want to." Following the gazes of the crowd, she looked over. I saw a clear and handsome young man, in a white shirt and jeans, needing no further adornment, just that vibrant, youthful aura was enough to make one's heart flutter. That was Matthew in his early 20s, and at this moment, his appearance seemed solely for the purpose of rescuing the damsel in distress, another woman. Matthew took 2 steps at a time, pushed through the crowd, and came between the two, gasping for breath. He first threw a punch at the half-kneeling Nick. "Ooh, you little beast." Then, amid the gasps of the crowd, he took Marsha's hand and turned to leave. It felt both strange and familiar. What's familiar is that, in the long years of the previous life, Matthew also protected his childhood sweetheart unconditionally like this, whether facing me or others. What's unfamiliar is that his actions today seem to differ from those in the previous life. In the previous life, when we learned the news that Marsha had been successfully confessed to, we were eating in the school cafeteria. Matthew trembled, and his fork clattered onto the table. What did he say back then? "All men are no good. I'm just worried Marsha might get hurt." Matthew made things even more dramatic with this commotion. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, but the most expressive reactions came from my roommates beside me. Yes, according to the plot progression, I should already be dating Matthew by now. My boyfriend stole someone else's girlfriend. It's just that dramatic. That night, a few people in the dorm tried their best to comfort me. They both cursed Matthew and made excuses for him. Their split personality act was so ridiculous it almost made me laugh. But I know all of this is only because they know I'm hopelessly in love with Matthew. They say my calm and tearless demeanor makes it seem like I've gone mad from the shock. But only I know that the Matthew of today is no different from a clown in my eyes. One can't keep stumbling over the same obstacle, especially the rebirth after experiencing life and death. Nick's confession indeed stirred up quite a buzz. Or more accurately, Matthew snatching someone away caused quite a stir. On the campus forum, the top 10 hottest posts were all about this incident, and even more, it gained a place in the local Twitter as well. Opening any random post, the discussions grew louder and more intense. Some sympathize with Nick for being unexpectedly beaten to the punch, some admire Matthew's bold move, and others even analyze point by point what kind of charm Marsha possesses to make the two compete for her. Until someone quietly spoke up, "Wait, doesn't everyone know, Matthew has a girlfriend, the campus belle of the design school, Melissa." Due to the vast differences in various conditions, Matthew felt a lot of pressure being with me, to make him feel at ease. We didn't officially announce our relationship and even deliberately avoided showing it in public. Only a small circle of close friends knew that we were dating. It was what you'd call a semi-secret romance. The user who broke the news was probably a friend of mine who couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up for me. Only now do I vaguely realize, I had such a wonderful family and so many friendships, yet in my past life, I foolishly poured all my heart into that damn love. Thinking back now, it just seems ridiculous. This revelation struck like a bolt from the blue. Everyone began to connect the dots, uncovering quite a few photos of me and Matthew being intimate, and in the end, they were shocked to find that what that person said seemed to be true. Online opinions have taken a sharp turn, shifting from initial amusement and cheers to merciless scorn. Wait, is this guy for real? Trying to have it both ways, playing both sides? He already has a girlfriend, so why is he pulling this hero-saving beauty act? Does the young master have some special kink? Bro, are you out of your mind? That's Melissa we're talking about. Maybe he just wants to try something different. Then you're being shallow. Don't you know what Melissa's family does? How can Marsha compare? The internet was buzzing with arguments. While I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, I smacked my lips and exited the post, then decided to jump in and post something myself. Not much content, just a few words. Thank you all for your concern. I've already told him to get lost. Simple, clear, and brutally direct. I really want to cut ties with Matthew, this dog, as soon as possible. But I was still too naive. Matthew, this shameless, clingy dog, how could he be so easily shaken off? It had been 3 days since we last met. Perhaps he was also afraid of losing face at school. Matthew asked to meet me at a cafe off campus. Come to think of it, this was truly the first time we had met since my rebirth. As soon as he opened his mouth, he certainly didn't disappoint me. "Why are you dressed like this?" I looked down at myself, a crop top and cargo pants, a perfectly normal outfit. Meeting his slightly furrowed brow, I understood. In my past life, Matthew preferred me in dresses, with a ladylike style. To get closer to his preferences, I completely reinvented myself from the inside out. It wasn't until I had a sudden awakening that I realized it wasn't that he liked gentle and virtuous girls, it was just that Marsha happened to fit that style. I lost myself for him, only to realize in the end that I was merely playing the role of someone else's shadow. Are you that free now? Not only meddling in your childhood friend's love life, but also your ex-girlfriend's fashion choices? Matthew frowned. Melissa, don't talk like that. You know I have my reasons. Having walked through so many years together, I naturally know what Matthew's next excuse will be. It's nothing more than how both he and Marsha had a tough childhood, with the two families supporting each other as they grew up. So Marsha is like a sister to him. Melissa, don't look at me with that expression. I absolutely won't allow Marsha to be with that scumbag. His words were spoken with such certainty that it made me feel strangely uneasy. I brushed off this odd feeling and went straight for the sarcasm. So concerned about her? Well, now's your chance, just go be with your little sister. Matthew was stunned by my retort for a few seconds, then furrowed his brows tightly. Melissa, how did you become like this? Stop throwing a tantrum. I already told you I had no choice. What more do you want from me? And what's the deal with that Weibo post? Go clarify it right away. Melissa, can't you be a bit more sensible like Marsha? Before Matthew could finish his sentence, I splashed a cup of coffee right at him. Didn't you hear me tell you to get lost? I could have just avoided meeting Matthew altogether, but some things had to be said face to face, like breaking up, like paying back the money. Matthew is starting a business. And I directly invested $500,000. I can let go of everything else, but this money, I must get back. How could I just watch him grow his business step by step again, until it becomes a towering tree, once more providing shelter from the wind and rain for his Marsha sister? Sorry, but this time, I'm not that foolish, nor that self-sacrificing. After telling him everything, I left without staying a moment longer, leaving a disgraced Matthew standing there in a daze. For a while after that, Matthew didn't show up, but Marsha unusually came to speak on his behalf. What she said was nothing more than the same old irrelevant clichés, just that Matthew, as an older brother, was only concerned about her. And that he didn't want to ruin the relationship between the two of us because of her. How exactly the same kindness as in the previous life, not wanting to ruin our relationship, so she would call Matthew in the middle of the night, crying and saying she was afraid of thunder, would call Matthew away on our wedding anniversary, just to have someone accompany her to the amusement park, would show up at our door crying when I was about to give birth. throwing herself into Matthew's arms begging for his protection. Indeed, it's an extraordinary sibling bond. Both of them are so alike, always wanting to have their cake and eat it too. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her any further, so I just threatened that if she bothered me again, I would expose everything about her and Matthew. When the time comes, everyone will judge the truth for themselves. After all, it's not like being upright makes one unafraid of a crooked shadow. Marcia blushed and slunk away, but then hid around the corner and made a phone call. Matthew, tell me, did I really affect you too? Melissa seems determined to break up with you. If it's my fault, I'm willing to. Before she could finish, the other person impatiently interrupted. Don't overthink it. It has nothing to do with you. Your Melissa's sister is just like that. Don't worry, she would never break up with me. Just wait, in a few days, when she figures it out on her own. She'll naturally come to apologize to me. Hearing this, I felt nothing but resentment. How much did I love Matthew in my past life? To have given him such audacious confidence. How on earth did I ever fall for such a worthless man? But no matter what happened before, everything is about to change now. Since I've been given a second chance, I will definitely save myself from this misery. Matthew was waiting for me to come to my senses and go back to apologize to him. But I certainly wasn't idle on my end either. As graduation approached in my senior year, one wave of complicated matters followed another. While preparing my graduation thesis, I was also diligently revising my resume. With my consistently top-ranking academic performance in the major and numerous national innovation awards in hand, I was confident about landing my ideal job offer. In my previous life, I was foolish enough to turn down the olive branches extended by major companies. All to better support Matthew in his entrepreneurial endeavors, ignoring everyone's advice. I married Matthew right after graduation and became a full-time housewife, just so he could pursue his dreams without any worries. But I held up his dream, and in the end, what did I get? This time, I must live for myself. Days passed, and I was so busy I barely had time to catch my breath. In a daze, an unfamiliar call came through. I thought it was Matthew who, after realizing he was blocked, found a new number to call again. I intended to hang up immediately, but after a moment's thought, I pressed the answer button. The male voice on the other end, however, wasn't the familiar one I expected. Melissa, right, we've received your resume. Goodbye, Patrick. I couldn't help but feel a bit dazed. Speaking of which, the two of us do seem to have a bit of fate between us. Our family and the Jew family have been close friends for generations, and by our generation, we even had a so-called childhood engagement arranged when I was just 2 or 3 years old. However, Patrick, who is 5 years older than me, went abroad to study at a young age, and on top of that, I fell hopelessly in love with Matthew. So this past affair became nothing more than a joke and was eventually forgotten. To be fair, Patrick is indeed a genius. He went abroad to study at a young age, won numerous international awards during that time, and upon returning, immediately founded his own tech startup. In just 3 short years, it leaped from an obscure newcomer to a leading star in the industry. What's even more commendable is that he achieved all this without using a single resource from his family. Even someone like Matthew, a top student and campus celebrity, could only feel inferior in front of Patrick. Thinking this way, I found Matthew even more useless, clearly relying on me for everything. Yet in the end, using all I had to protect another woman, the memories from my previous life are still vivid in my mind. I am well aware that Patrick will soon successfully build his own business empire, and I also know that this tech startup could be a great stage for me to showcase my talents. So, with a try-it-out mindset, I submitted my resume. To my surprise, my resume actually passed the initial screening. What I didn't expect even more was that I smoothly cleared each step of the interview process. Eventually reaching the final stage, the boss's interview, I never expected that Patrick would still remember me. However, he didn't engage in much small talk and got straight to the point, asking me some professional questions. I felt quite satisfied with my answers, and with that, the interview concluded smoothly. Just as I stood up to leave, he called me back. "I'll take you home." Me, the other person maintained an expressionless face. "It's been so long since I returned to the country. My father asked me to pay a visit to your father." Silence filled the journey. I closed my eyes and leaned against the car window, the light rain pattering outside, yet my mind was anything but calm. Everything since my rebirth has been vastly different from my previous life, not just in me, but also in the suddenly changed attitude of Matthew. I struggled desperately to change my fate, yet feared that all my efforts might be in vain. My mind was a tangled mess. I rubbed my eyes and opened them. At that very glance, something filthy appeared before my eyes. Matthew, that figure, I would recognize it even if it turned to ashes. At this moment, he is lingering at my doorstep, hesitant and annoying. Thinking back, Matthew was always the most resistant to being associated with my family. For the sake of his fragile pride, he never wanted to walk me home, let alone interact much with my parents. Even after marriage, he maintained the greatest sense of distance. But does he even know that? In his previous life, everything he had was backed and supported by my family from behind the scenes, wanting to maintain integrity, yet unable to let go of resources. How laughable. Patrick parked the car, and I pushed the door open without even glancing at Matthew beside me, heading straight to unlock the door. But my wrist was suddenly grabbed. Turning around, I met Matthew's slightly reddened eyes. "Melissa, where have you been all these days? I waited for you downstairs at your dorm. But your roommates said they hadn't seen you and told me to get lost." I gave a hollow, insincere smile. "What do you think I'm doing? Of course, I'm busy with work. Do you think everyone is like you, waiting for a pie to fall from the sky? Are you still angry after all this time? Can you stop making a scene? I'm really busy right now. I have to deal with the studio's funding issues and keep that scumbag away from Marsha. At a time like this, can you please not add to my troubles?" I immediately shook off his hand and said coldly, "I never knew you were so persistent with your ex-girlfriend. Breaking up means it's over. Don't you get it? Instead of wasting time on these meaningless things, you should spend it thinking about how to pay me back." I looked at him with a raised eyebrow and a smile. "Of course, I wouldn't mind suing you directly either." Matthew's face flashed with embarrassment, but the next second, he frowned deeply again, all because Patrick got out of the car and stood by my side. I watched as Matthew's expression gradually became more and more dramatic. Without asking anything, Matthew started off with a cold laugh. "So this is what you've been busy with. If I pass the interview, Patrick will be my boss, so yes. I am indeed busy with this." I nodded. Matthew's face darkened. Abandoning his earlier gentle persuasion, he started cursing outright. "Melissa, oh Melissa, do you even have any shame?" At this point, his handsome image completely fell apart. "Don't you know you have a boyfriend? Running around flirting with shady men?" I felt sorrowful, and also found it ridiculous. "You have a girlfriend too, yet you're still flirting with Marsha and even acted out a hero saving the beauty. Matthew, haven't you realized yet what's really wrong with you?" He hurried to defend himself. "I'm not like you. Indeed, how can a person be compared to a dog? So this is why you suddenly wanted to break up with me." His gaze shifted back and forth between me and Patrick, as insecure and sensitive as ever. All right, it's me who's not good enough for you." He smiled self-mockingly. "I guess I just can't fit into your world after all. Fine, let it be then. I respect your choice. Don't worry. I'll pay back every penny you invested, not a cent less." After saying this, Matthew walked away without looking back. I let out a long sigh and didn't speak. Patrick sidestepped past me into the courtyard. After just a couple of steps, he stopped again, turned his head, and said expressionlessly, "Your taste is terrible." Me. Perhaps because last time Matthew had his self-esteem severely bruised, for a long time afterward, he indeed kept his promise and disappeared from my life. Maybe to save face, he also quickly returned my $500,000 in full. After seeing the payment go through, I immediately blocked and deleted Alipay, the last remaining contact method. I didn't care how he raised the funds, as long as he paid me back. As the days went by, I successfully joined Patrick's company. Just when I thought life was finally getting back on track, Matthew popped up again to disgust me. It was an ordinary day for taking graduation photos. On the same day in my previous life, I followed Matthew around non-stop, countless duo photos filling up the memory card. I thought I had captured the most important moments of my life, only to realize in the end that aside from these ridiculous memories, I had nothing. Now, experiencing the little moments with friends in a different way, I've come to realize that life can actually be wonderfully vibrant. Matthew announced his relationship with Marsha during the graduation photo session. Like a sudden clap of thunder from a clear sky, shocking everyone to the core, the confession incident from a while ago had already passed, but unexpectedly, he stirred up waves again at this moment. Wearing his graduation gown, he held hands with Marsha, who was pulled onto the stage, openly expressing his affection. In his graduation speech, he said that the person he should thank the most is Marsha, mentioning how much she had helped him and that he was willing to spend his whole life cherishing and protecting her. Hearing these somewhat familiar words, I couldn't help but find it amusing. Matthew's affection was, after all, so cheap. I don't know what his intentions were in choosing to be with Marsha. Perhaps he didn't want his childhood friend to be mistreated by other men, or perhaps he simply couldn't suppress the restlessness in his heart. I just found the expressions on both their faces quite interesting. Marsha frowned deeply, while Matthew glanced in the direction where I stood, his smug expression looking utterly ridiculous. He wouldn't think I'd regret it, would he? Matthew made a big show of announcing it publicly. Among the onlookers, there were also those who cast pitying glances my way. Abandoned by my boyfriend and then publicly humiliated. How pitiful. Right, I felt calm inside. Just a bit annoyed that another stain had been added to my life. Some of my close classmates were indignant on my behalf, but I only had one thing to say: I don't feel anything, I just feel embarrassed. Seeing everyone's expressions that said, I get it, you don't have to pretend, I just felt a wave of exasperation. But the current situation where reason couldn't be explained clearly became entirely justified just a few minutes later. Patrick has arrived, with great fanfare. And not the slightest bit of low-key, but for a high-profile figure like him, being low-key probably wouldn't make much difference anyway. Surrounded by a crowd of school board members vying for investment and employment metrics, he pointed at me. Don't get the wrong idea, we're not here to talk business today. I'm here to take her home. Me, bro, are you still not over your post-travel syndrome? Can you even speak properly anymore? Actually, Patrick wasn't entirely wrong. The two families did indeed plan a gathering today, and they did ask Patrick to pick me up from school after the graduation ceremony. It's just that the way he said it somehow twisted the meaning. Patrick led me out of the auditorium, and I could hear gasps all around. Having lived through the experiences of my past life, I no longer cared about these trivial romantic entanglements, but when I glanced back and saw Matthew's face as dark as a pot's bottom, I suddenly felt that a bit more of this pointless behavior wouldn't hurt, turn their own methods against them. Who doesn't know how to do that? As the fragrance of gardenias faded with the graduation season, foolish and naive college students stepped into the working world. For me, it was a completely new experience. Yet it gave me endlessly wonderful memories. Only after starting over did I realize how wonderful my life could be without Matthew. I cherish this second chance. Rather than continuing the pain of my previous life and obsessively with a scumbag for the thrill of revenge, I value more the opportunity to walk a new path and redeem my suffering self. The lowest cost choice was to stay away, and I truly committed to doing just that. It's just a pity that Matthew is like a piece of sticky gum. I clearly let him go, yet he insists on clinging to me again and again. I heard that after graduation, Matthew was still pursuing entrepreneurship, but without my support, the journey became extremely difficult. What I didn't expect, however, was that he would attend the same bidding event as Patrick's company, and they were even competing for the same project. As luck would have it, I accompanied Patrick to that bidding event. When I saw Matthew again, the confidence he once had was gone, replaced by a look of exhaustion that hinted at his recent struggles. It turns out that without me, Matthew is nothing as well. Noticing my gaze, he also turned to look at me, his eyes dark and inscrutable, with an unclear mix of sincerity and pretense. Of course, I knew that winning this project was a matter of life and death for him, but I also understood that competing with Patrick was like an egg striking a rock. The outcome was no surprise. We won the bid, and Matthew suffered a crushing defeat. I thought this insignificant meeting would end here. But unexpectedly, Matthew stopped me at the deserted stairwell corner, his face slightly flushed, as if he had mustered great courage. He said, "Melissa, long time no see." I muttered under my breath, "Just my luck." Once, I adored his shy and broken demeanor, but now, seeing it again, all that remains is disgust. Matthew engaged in some trivial small talk until he noticed my impatience and finally steered the conversation to the main point. "Melissa, I was too impulsive last time. I shouldn't have said those harsh words to you. Are you truly happy now?" Me, LOL. Does he really think I'm still moping over him? "Melissa, do you still remember what we used to say? To work hard together and build a career that belongs to just the two of us, if you were still by my side. I believe this dream would have come true very soon." He smiled self-deprecatingly. I couldn't help but think to myself, yeah, while money can't solve every problem, it can still take care of over 90% of them, right? I kindly reminded him to watch his words and actions, especially since his girlfriend was still waiting for him at home. Matthew, however, wore a constipated expression, insisting, "It's not what you think," back and forth. It's always the same line. I'm tired of hearing it. I don't understand what's wrong with me either. But one thing I'm sure of is, I really just wanted to protect Marsha. Plus, you broke up with me. I was so angry and confused, and I also wanted to take this opportunity. Take this opportunity to do what? Make me regret it to the point of heartbreak. I quickly told him to shut up, afraid that his foul mouth would say something else that would make me sick. I turned to leave Matthew, but he kept pestering me relentlessly from behind. "Melissa, listen to me. Patrick, that kind of man, you can't handle him." I found it amusing. "So what? Should I have wasted my whole life on a man like you, poor, insecure, broke, and unable to control his own heart?" I kept walking without stopping, until he inexplicably shouted from behind, "Have you come back too?" I should have realized it sooner. I suspected Matthew's unusual behavior, and he must have noticed my own peculiarities as well. Just as I thought, Matthew had also been reborn. As for his questioning, I didn't hide anything either, only saying that I didn't want to repeat the mistakes of my past life and that this time, I wanted to live for myself. I thought that after learning the truth, we would continue to coexist peacefully. He was reborn to save his childhood sweetheart from hardship, and I was reborn to free myself from suffering. Since we both knew the paths we wanted to take, there was no longer any need for entanglement. But who would have thought that after learning the truth, Matthew instead descended into madness? He used every possible means to contact me. Even though I blocked him each time I discovered one, I thought it was the hardships of life that drove him insane, especially since the news of Marsha cheating with Nick was spreading like wildfire. Matthew must have been utterly devastated. The little green plum I would protect at all costs even if I had to start over, still ended up walking the same path. You have to admit, it's hard to persuade someone who is determined to die with kind words. Until Matthew somehow found a new phone number to send me messages, only then did I realize how utterly unhinged he was, and not just in this one regard. Long, rambling paragraphs made my head spin. I had no patience to read them carefully and only skimmed through a few lines. Matthew expressed a simple idea. In the previous life, upon hearing about my accident, he rushed to the hospital immediately. Unfortunately, in a fit of rage, he got into a car accident and died on the spot. He said it. And he truly regretted it. He didn't even get to see our daughter one last time. I was so angry I almost laughed. He spoke with such sincerity. Yet the first thing he did after being reborn was to risk everything for that childhood sweetheart of his, wasn't it? Mentioning our daughter stirred the only trace of tenderness left in my heart. She is so small, so adorable, I can't bear to imagine how she would cope with the loss of both parents. But now, things are different. Everything is about to change, and no one will repeat the same mistakes. Matthew kept repeating his resentment, over and over with the same line. We're already married, how could you leave me now? It just goes to show how foolish men can be. I never cherished what I had, and now that I realize it's lost, I'm using all those years of feelings to make a point. Yet, through all those countless days and nights, he clearly had the chance to take on the responsibilities of a husband. And it would have been so easy to dissolve the barriers in my heart, but he didn't. He'd rather pour all his tenderness onto another woman, clearly crossing the line in his heart, yet forcefully draping it in the guise of a sibling bond to cover his shame. And to me, it was always disregard, always taken for granted, just as he said to Marsha, so sure that I would never leave him. But no matter how much he calculated, he never outsmarted fate. Looking at the last message Matthew sent. Marsha is a sister, you and I are husband and wife, why can't we coexist peacefully? I finally laughed out of sheer frustration, once again blocking and deleting this new number. Matthew doesn't love me at all, he just can't stand the thought of something that once belonged to him slipping away. After all, I was supposed to be the one who loves, so how could he tolerate my betrayal? I thought I'd just let Matthew wallow in his own madness. But who knew he'd already become so repulsive that it's seriously affecting my life, lurking around the company building, prowling near my doorstep, trying every possible way to make me return to him. Even after being Patrick had people teach him a lesson time and again, even after being detained at the police station, he still obsessively wanted me to change my mind. He disgusts me, nauseates me, fills me with hatred. He tore apart the last shred of dignity with his own hands, yet delusionally hoped I would forget the past and love him as before. Some people are just that selfish. In the end, I made it clear that if he continued to harass me, I would immediately marry Patrick, and only then did Matthew finally back off. I no longer wanted to dwell on the past and did not go after Matthew to the bitter end. To my surprise, however, Matthew's studio announced its closure the very next day. Although its operations were already on shaky ground, I knew that it had also been the culmination of Matthew's heart and soul. Had there been any chance, he would never have let his efforts go to waste. It seems the only possibility is that someone has been tampering behind the scenes. Just as I was racking my brains, I saw Patrick smirk. All right, you're the boss, you're awesome. It's not that I don't know Patrick's intentions. But after experiencing life and death, I no longer have any illusions about love. In response to my explanation, Patrick merely said he simply found Matthew too annoying. In his words, it was just a small favor. Is there a problem with that? Me, all right, that's just perfect. After losing his only career as a support, Matthew's life became utterly destitute. I doubt he has any time to bother with me while he's stuck in the mud. What I didn't expect was that, Matthew, though he had settled down, Marsha actually came knocking at my door. To be honest, our interactions weren't really that many, and all the focus was on Matthew, so when she rushed at me frantically, I was just baffled. An ordinary street corner, me standing waiting for the bus, a madwoman charging out of the alley. The scene couldn't have been more bizarre. After so long, Marsha no longer resembled the innocent and unworldly girl she once was. It is said that Nick approached her again only to seek revenge for the humiliation he suffered when he confessed his feelings. Marcia and Matthew had endured enough hardship, so they joyfully threw themselves into Nick's embrace. But after that, domestic violence, pregnancy, forced abortion, everything came crashing down like a raging flood. So in the end, Marcia, covered in wounds, accepted Matthew's protection once again. Unfortunately, Matthew's studio went bankrupt. And the last of the good days came to an end. Her hair was disheveled, and she immediately tried to slap me. After I shoved her away fiercely, she cried hysterically, "Melissa, you're nothing but a bitch. Aren't you already a big shot on the list? Why do you still have to come and take my Matthew? This is absurd. It's all your fault. Everything is your fault. If it weren't for you, Matthew would only care about me in this lifetime. Do you know he's like a wreck now? Completely distracted because of you. Bitch, give me back the old Matthew." No wonder Marcia and Matthew are essentially the same kind of people. They want it all, wishing everyone in the world would revolve around them. I couldn't be bothered to deal with her anymore and called the police directly. Before the police arrived, Matthew showed up instead. He restrained the frenzied Marcia, avoiding eye contact as he apologized to me. Marcia struggled and, with lightning speed, slapped Matthew across the face. I inwardly cheered. Well done. And you're no good either. If it weren't for your meddling, I would have been living the life I wanted long ago. Didn't you say you would protect me for a lifetime? Look at me now, look at what I've become. I wish I had never met you at all. Seeing Matthew's stunned expression, it must have been excruciatingly painful. Even after being reborn, he still wanted to protect her. But in the end, it was nothing more than a one-sided affection. Is it worth it? Because of this, I lost everything I once had: love, family. I couldn't describe the feeling in my heart, no great joy or sorrow, only the calmness that comes after seeing through everything. No one expected that. Just as Matthew was lost in thought, Marcia used all her strength to break free from his restraint. Then, as if gone mad, she lunged toward me just a few steps away. "Let's go to hell together." My breath hitched abruptly. All because she had pulled out a short knife from somewhere, pointing it straight at my chest. In the critical moment, it was Matthew who lunged and knocked me down, using his own body as a shield. Taking the blow of that knife, I could hear his muffled groan and feel the front of my clothes being soaked by the trickling blood. As if on cue, the sound of sirens rang out at that very moment. Marcia also seemed to snap out of a daze at that moment, screaming as she scrambled up from the ground. Covering her head and running away, amid the clamor and chaos around, I finally heard Matthew murmur with all his strength, "I'm sorry." A scalding tear slid from the corner of my eye. I don't even know for whom I am grieving. In the end, the story concluded with Matthew's death and Marcia's imprisonment. Amid the chaos of the world, even if given a second chance, fate ultimately led to a different ending. May we awaken in time, and be at peace with our conscience.